Welcome to this video of our AI Unscripted series. And today I have a special guest. I have Elke Gerards with me. And we're going to touch upon the human aspect of AI and also what it means for us in terms of change, uncertainty, and so on. And I've seen, of course, that you have a history with brains, with people, humans. And what interested you and brought you to talking about resilience, work-life balance? What's your story, in fact?
I have a background in neuropsychology, and for many years I've always been triggered by the brain and the massive impact it has on how we think, how we feel, how we behave.
Yeah.
And throughout all the research that I've conducted, I've often seen people who were really proactive and resilient versus people who took more like a victim role.
Yeah.
And I was really triggered by so much resilience that I've witnessed from people that we've been investigating, that I decided to start our company, Better Minds at Work, and now 10 years ago, to really unlock minds of everyone and make people aware about the huge potential that everyone has inside your own brain.
Yeah, and you're living, of course, in a period, we've seen COVID, now we're seeing AI, so it's all about uncertainty, in fact. And do you see that the way that we look at uncertainty and resilience, is that evolving? Because a lot of stuff is being done. You wrote a number of books on that. We're going to touch upon that later. Are we changing, or?
Well, there's a lot of change, evidently, in the world in the past years. And typically people in times of change get into resistance or even denial. I often hear people say, well, AI, it's not going to be that major. So people are really still in denial, often also on automatic pilot, keeping on with the routines, the habits that we've always done, and assuming that at some point everything will be great again and change will disappear. And I see it everywhere on each continent, and I really write the books to make people more aware about, well, just accept that this is as good as it gets and that we're up for maybe decades of a lot of change, and then you better use your own brain potential to deal with it.
Yeah, we're going to touch upon that again a bit on detail later on. But if you then just look at us, we're Europeans, Belgians, are we a bit predestined to be conservative and resistance to change as maybe more in our culture than in others? Or don't you see that difference if you talk, because you also do sessions, of course, abroad? How open-minded are we really on all those things?
Well, I think it's difficult to say about all Europeans, but typically I see a lot of resistance to change, and that's typical for the human brain. It likes to stay in the comfort zone, that there's a lot of predictability, and people get reluctant in times of change to evolve and embrace the change.
Yeah, so it's fleeing or fighting. That's a bit the natural behavior.
Yes, yes.
Here it's a bit more complicated.
Fight, flight is typical in when your brain thinks there's a crisis or there's a lot of threat. Then it's really like the fight, flight, or even freeze for some people. Okay,
and that you also see in, we saw that with COVID, we even did a number of things together then also at that time to see, okay, how can we accommodate? I think all in all, that went pretty well, because we had a Nostradamus effect that we thought the world will come to an end. It didn't really come to an end.
Yeah.
It was, of course, a very painful episode for many people, so that is not what I'm saying, but still, I think business-wise, people recovered. Do you think that this will be the same with AI, that in 10 years' time we will say, well, it was a hype, and the way that we need to work hasn't fundamentally changed?
Well, I do think it will fundamentally change the way we work, and that AI has so many potentials for us humans that we better embrace it and not let our brains being led by algorithms, but that we decide how we are going to lead. So I think in contrast to COVID, where we just had to sit through the period, Now we really have to sit in the driver's seat and let AI do the work for us that may impact our lives positively.
And how do we do that? How do we rewire ourselves, in a sense?
Well, that's very good news that we can rewire at any moment in our lives up until the moment that we're dead.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So our brain it has a huge plasticity. So if you decide like, I want to change, I want to rewire, you can. And I like to compare our brain with a jungle with thousands of pathways. And that's also the case in our brain. It has thousands of kilometers of pathways and many brain cells that are connected. And typically people take the major pathways in our jungle. And you know those pathways. They're your habits, the things that you do almost on automatic pilot without a lot of energy that you are spending on it. And when you want to learn something new, it's like you have to cut a new pathway in your own jungle. And that takes time. It requires energy and effort. And typically, in times of stress, for instance, when people experience change, people choose for the big pathways because they can do it effortlessly. Because stress really reduces the energy that you can spend on cutting through your jungle. So it's really about becoming really aware that we should step sometimes away from those big pathways and dare to cut through our jungle.
And is that something that you can do alone? Do you look at employers also for that? How will that interaction go, you think?
I think it's a combined story. Typically, individuals should take ownership on their own brain. And often I see that employees are pointing towards their employer, like, you should solve my well-being and my productivity. And of course, the employer should have processes installed that can facilitate it. But I think that every individual should feel the responsibility to take care of your brain potential and to show that also to the next generations.
So that's not the only understanding what AI is technically, but that's a completely different ball game, and the stuff that you are talking about. So very concretely, if you then need to give advice to people, how do you do that? How do you basically select the pathway that you do? Because it sounds straightforward, but I guess it's not. So how do you go about doing that?
I think it's a day-by-day exercise with keeping a certain goal in mind. We should have a laser-sharp future focus where we want to go to. And that often means getting rid of short-term gains, because we're quite into the short-term benefits that we may have. And we have to keep ourselves away from that and really have the strategic decisions in mind. And that means acting with self-control, restraint, patience, and a lot of reflection. And typically those are the things that people are not that good at. And what I say when it's a day-by-day exercise is that people often set a certain goal. And when we don't immediately reach it, we give up. You see that on New Year's. The parks and woods are full with people who think, I'm going to start to run. And typically research shows that by January 21, it's again empty because we've given up. Like running the 5 kilometers as a goal maybe isn't going that well, and we stop. And the same holds for new work habits. If we don't immediately reach that goal, we give up. And my advice is always simple. You have to stop wanting to jump to a goal, but learning to dance step by step, little steps, little sub-goals. And if you reach them, you'll be able to motivate your brain to go to the next phase. And that's how you really cut new pathways in your jungle.
Maybe a dimension I see that maybe is different now than it was in the past is it's increasingly complicated to identify what is now that mid to long-term goal, because we don't really know where the world is going to. So that's in itself probably also a stress factor.
Yes, but maybe also accepting that this is as good as it gets, and accepting that we cannot predict the future in 5 years. Sometimes people ask me, where do you see better minds in 5 years or in 10 years? And I'm fine with saying, I don't know. There will be so much change that I don't know what our offering will be and how we have to change ourselves. And I would hope that embracing that uncertainty is something that individuals, but also organizations and society will get better at. Because people are control freaks in some way. And if we don't have control and don't have the predictability, we create anxiety. And anxiety is the worst characteristic to have when you need to change.
Yeah, because sometimes the narrative is used by organizations, and maybe we have done the same in a number of instances, is that you need to adapt or you will become irrelevant. That's of course a very harsh narrative, because it's very punitive. You have to do something, and if not, you're dead almost. What is the phrasing that you would use? Because that cannot be the message in itself. Of course people need to adapt, but it's the carrot or the stick, and we tend to use the stick a bit too much. So
yeah,
what's there the trick that you would have?
Well, I would hope that in a time where AI is becoming more and more influential, that we all learn to look at our own AI. I call it our authentic intelligence that makes us unique as human beings. And I would wish for that everyone has the ability and the motivation to unlock their own mind. And only when you are able to unlock your own mind, become aware why you behave in a certain way, why you get anxious of change, how you have certain feelings. If you can unlock that, then you can be able to transform from within. And that holds for an individual, but also for organizations. But it's becoming much more aware about our own brain potential. Typically, if I ask people, what do you know about your brain? It's almost nothing. We know how to eat well, how to move well, but we barely know something about our own brain. We don't learn it in school, and we just use this important organ, but without really taking care of it.
Yeah, so it's the old recipes that you had in your previous books, because the principles are still the same. So it's also identify what gives you positive and negative energy, and indeed what stimulates you. That's a bit
yes, exactly. But also becoming aware how you often go on automatic pilot. There's a lot of biases that we have. We often jump to conclusions, and we very often resist to something new without even having thought it through. And that's the automatic pilot in us that we use in about 90% of the time during our day. And of course, that's important because we cannot think about everything. But quite often, the responsibilities, the roles that we have in our life at work and in our private life, it's vital to have decisions that are thought through, that you have some time to think about and to make careful decisions, to use your full intellect. And I call that our authentic pilot. And very often people go on the automatic pilot. They don't unlock their mind, they don't observe why do I behave in the way that I do, and don't choose for that authentic pilot. And I would assume that in a time of AI, we all need that authentic pilot a lot more.
And also not the self-criticism, but the criticism about what you see around you, that this is not necessarily the only truth, of course.
Exactly. It's like, for instance, with fake news. People quite often just accept it and don't have this criticism anymore. And as again, automatic pilot, you see something, you hear something, people tell you something, persuade you, and then we just use that narrative instead of creating our own narrative.
And if people then say, yeah, that's all fine, you are a fortunate one because you're organizing your schedule yourself. I think even if you're independent, you don't organize your schedule yourself.
No.
But anyway, that doesn't matter. But people will probably say, yeah, if I would have had the time to do everything that you say, that would be fine, but I don't. Because I'm in a bit of a rat race. I have metrics, I have KPIs that I need to achieve. What's your answer to that? Do you not always have the time? Or should you not always have the time?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of time. There are quite some hours in the day. I think it's a matter of focus.
Yeah.
People often talk about time management and that they're too busy to learn something new or to change. But I think it's a matter of focus. And our focus is decreased big time in the past years because of all the distractions that we allow to enter the way we work, the way we live, the way we pay attention to our colleagues, our clients, but also our loved ones. And I think by being able to focus better on what really matters and where you should pay attention to, short term, but also the long term, their time will happen. Very often people are multitasking all time.
Yeah.
And all the research is very clear about it. Our brain cannot do it. But still, in the rat race, we all keep on doing it instead of focusing on one thing at a time. And there, I think, by allowing yourself to rewire you to single tasking again, you gain a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of creativity, a lot of time to reflect, and a lot of time to choose for that authentic pilot instead of living the rat race.
Yeah, because otherwise it's becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. The rat race creates the rat race. That's a bit...
Exactly. And I think that the motto of our era could quite well be, well, I tried to live, but I got distracted. And think about how that would look on our tombstones, Patrick. It's like a quiet reminder of a life with a lot of potential that we all have. But somehow we let it slip away because we were busy living the rat race. And I think that's a bit pity in the life that we have, that we allow ourselves to get distracted, to live by the expectations that people and organizations have from us, instead of listening more to who you are and unlocking your own mind and choosing for your own authenticity.
Maybe moving to a slightly different angle, and it's the fact that if you talk about careers, it's never been fully linear, but well, in our generation, we were relatively linear in what you started something and you evolved.
Yes.
Now, of course, it's going to be more, I think, in certain cases, a kind of stop-go, and you branch out to something completely different. That in itself, again, is, if you need to rewire, that is a challenge, I guess. And that's in itself an important element of stress for people, as to say, okay, the content of what I'm currently doing will potentially disappear, and I will need to find something else. That's complicated, I guess, because that's not human nature again, and that's not only focusing then, but that's reinventing yourself as you go.
Yes.
That is, I think, is that also not one of the biggest challenges of our society?
Definitely. When we were young, you would have a certificate from university or high school, and that would predict your career. While now, it's just a piece of paper that will prepare you for critical thinking, and then it will be a totally different pathway in your career. And you already see that a lot in the United States, the so-called gig economy. There's more than 40% of the people under 30, they only do gigs based on their talents, the capacities that they evolve. And I do believe that the young generation already has this preparedness to think more in terms of gigs and their talents and how they can benefit from that, instead of having your entire career pathway already rolled out for you. But of course, people who started in that way, it will be difficult to rewire. And even there, it will be very important to realize what makes me unique from AI. How can I distinguish myself? And even if AI will take over my job for the biggest part, what can I do to make myself sustainable on the work floor? And how can I invest more in what makes me unique? But in order to do that, you should take time to get out of the rat race, to focus on what makes you, you. and instead of just continuing based on anxiety and routine.
And looking a bit at yourself, indeed. So a bit selfishness, but in a positive manner.
Yes, definitely.
We're not we're all unique. That's a bit what you are saying.
Yes, everyone is unique. If you think about it, our brain is extremely complex, and it would be naive to assume that somewhere in the world there will be someone exactly like you. And it's only by unlocking your own authentic self and showing that authenticity that you'll be able to connect with the people around you. And if we talk about AI, I think the other side of it is connection. The human connection will be even more important than it has ever been in a time with so much change and instability and challenges. The human connection will be vital. And I believe you can only do that when you have access to your own authenticity, show it to the people, and they will connect to that. It will create a certain psychological safety on the work floor, in your networks, and that human connection will make us resilient collectively.
Yeah. Maybe last question, and let's throw us back in time, and we're now 18, 19. Imagine that would be
It's a while ago,
that would be great.
Yeah.
If that were possible. Maybe AI will allow us to do so, but I don't know. But still, I think if you look at the education system, it has evolved a bit, but it's not really now that there's no criticism as to the link between education system and business. There is room for improvement. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
So people, let's say that people are also listening in of that age category, and they are confronted with the question, what do I need to study? Because I think there's still probably you need to study for a job. And that's probably not what you are saying, because you're saying something else. You're talking about more capabilities and experiences that they will want to gain for the future.
Yeah.
But still, what is your 2 cents of advice in that context?
Well,
what do you need to do as a youngster now?
I think as a youngster, it's quite hard to choose a certain direction. For my own kids, I will advise them when they're 18 to go and live a year abroad.
Okay.
But
they will come back, eh?
Yeah.
We need talent in Belgium.
They will come back. It's not the brain drain that I'm stimulating, but getting more experiences. Evolving a bit more in your mind, because 18 is quite young. Until 25, your brain is still maturing. So it's actually quite young to choose on that moment. So I would say get a lot of experiences when you're young. Get to know yourself. Take time to reflect and learn more about what makes you unique. And then dare to choose something that fits you. Not depending on this is the job that I want to do, because by the time that you finished university, that job may be gone for a big part. So it's about finding something that will allow you to learn more about authenticity, about critical thinking that makes us unique, but also about rewiring constantly. A computer can be reprogrammed, but we humans can decide any minute of the day, from now on, I'm going to do it differently. So there's a lot of things that in every direction that you choose at school later on, that critical thinking will be stimulated. And making sure that you choose something where all those authentic, unique qualities are being addressed in school, that will help you forward.
So in a sense, the choice that they make nowadays is less important than it was in our time, as a result of the fact that there are less walls between the topics as such. So
yeah, I would assume so.
So it's more emotional intelligence, adaptability. That is what they need to focus on.
Yeah, and critical thinking.
I
think that's really important.
Yep.
But also understanding that the 4 or 5 year project that you're going to have and learning when you're 18, that's not the end. It's now about lifelong learning and really getting more in, having a deep dive in your talents, what makes you unique, that will be something for life, and that cannot end when you're 25.
Well, it's already positive because I thought I was started to degenerate as from 18, so I won 7 years, so that's definitely positive. But you wrote already a lot of books. You also gave me the Authentic Intelligence book, which is from 2019.
Yes, right before the pandemic, I wrote this book.
So it's still relevant material for people to glance through?
I think it's more relevant than ever. Because of the pandemic, there was like a pause on how we looked at AI, because our focus was really on surviving the pandemic. But nowadays in companies, but also individuals, there's a heightened interest in artificial intelligence, and then I think this is a good different perspective on what we should do in a time of AI, and focus on our own AI, our authentic intelligence.
Okay, good. With that, I would like to finish this session. I hope that everyone that tuned in enjoyed it. It was very interesting, a lot of material, but of course it's a starting point for a discussion, Elke. I think that's key. So thanks for tuning in, and hope to see everyone back in one of our next sessions. Bye-bye for now. Bye.